Hello, creeps. It's me, John Kassir, the voice of the Crypt Keeper, and you're listening to Chronicles from the Crypt.
Hello there, I'm Casualty Chris.
And this is Father Malone.
And we are the hosts of Chronicles from the Crypt, a twice-a-month look at the horror anthology series Tales from the Crypt that ran on HBO from
1889
from 1989 to 1996.
Now, on each of our podcasts, we examine 2 episodes of Tales from the Crypt, and along the way, in between seasons, we tend to take an examination of ephemera that are tangentially related to Tales from the Crypt, whether it be movies that came before or after, and here we go. Season 5, yo!
Yep, so we're going to be talking about the 3rd and 4th episode of Season 5, Forever Ambergris, and Food for Thought.
Yes, I think the Fish Islands will do fine. Greetings, fashion fiends. So glad you could join me. Bet you didn't know your pal the Crypt Keeper dabbled in photography. I just love winding a few rolls of Côte de Grone into my camera, turning on the old fright meter, and snapping off a few head shots. Tonight's putrid picture is sure to increase your shutter speed. It's about a photographer who's losing his touch and would do almost anything to get it back. Did I say almost? I call this sickening snapshot Forever Ambergris.
So, Forever Ambergris aired October 2nd, 1993. So they aired 3 episodes the first night the show came back for the 5th season. It is directed by Gary Flater, written by Scott Rosenberg. It stars Roger Daltrey. Roger Daltrey, you may ask. Yes, Roger Daltrey, the lead singer for The Who. Steve Buscemi. I believe Titus Welliver is in there as well.
He absolutely is.
And so is, what's the Marshall Bell.
Marshall Bell's in there. Lizette Anthony, who showed a lot of promise, and then there was never sort of a follow-up to it. But Lizette Anthony is fantastic. It
wasn't just the promise she was showing, big fella.
Well, in this particular episode, yes, she gets down to it. But Lizette Anthony from Bram Stoker's Dracula and the sequel to Trilogy of Terror, I think she was underused, let's say. I think she's a better actress than what we're getting here.
Well, she's not given much to do anyways.
That's true, but all right, let me go ahead. This
But by all means, interject, right. Father Malone.
I'm going to go ahead. Okay, Forever Ambergris. The comic book that it's adapted from is Tales from the Crypt, number 44. This is a monumental moment in Tales from the Crypt history, and then it's actually based on a Tales from the Crypt comic book.
I think we can count how many of them on, 2 hands at this point.
At this point, yeah, and it's kind of shocking to me that they weren't sort of leaning more heavily into Tales from the Crypt. But this is Tales from the Crypt, issue number 44. The comic originally was written and drawn by Mr. Jack Davis. I'm going to go ahead and say he was the best influence on Tales from the Crypt. He's a fucking fantastic artist. He was a really good writer. The comic book itself differentiates not wildly from what we ended up with here on screen, but enough that I kind of applaud and deride the script that we got. The filmed version that we got is a couple of wartime photographers, one played by Roger Daltrey, who is the veteran who's been working at it forever, and Steve Buscemi, who is the kind of neophyte who looks up to him. In the case of this episode, Steve Buscemi invites him home to meet his wife, who he's completely in love with. Roger Daltrey comes home with him, falls in love with her, but she kind of rebuffs him. Then those two characters go away to a war-torn climb. Roger Daltrey knows that there's a particular village where there's a virulent strain of a virus This is very topical. And sends him away. Steve Buscemi gets the virus, dies, and Roger Daltrey returns to claim this girl that he's been in love with, although she rebuffed him sort of initially. In the comic book, very different. This is the 1950s. The most sort of far-flung, foreign place a character could be was a longshoreman. Roger Daltrey's character is the skipper of a ship that goes overseas to collect items. His first mate is a guy who has fallen in love with and married this woman who is sort of above his stature necessarily. But in the comic, the woman, when the lead character meets her, is the typical Tales from the Crypt character, where she's completely in love with him as well. She's kind of a harridan, if you will, and she's just waiting for her husband to die so she can be back with this interloper. And in the case of the comic book, he finds an island in the middle of the Pacific that still has bubonic plague, sends the husband character, the Steve Buscemi character, to go to that island where he contracts bubonic plague and ends up dying. But then on the way back, they're followed by a whale who keeps eating everything that they're throwing off of the ship, all of the sort of refuse, including, unfortunately, the corpse of the Steve Buscemi character, and then disgorges everything, which is part and parcel to the title of the episode, Forever Ambergris. Ambergris, of course, being when a whale vomits, it vomits up this thing called ambergris, which most perfumes around the world are made out of. They collect the ambergris from the whale, they end up making it into a perfume, and they spray it on the wife who has been waiting for the Roger Daltrey character to come back, and when it does, she gets the bubonic plague herself and ends up disintegrating in front of him. Forever Ambergris as a title works very well in the comic book. It doesn't work at all here. There is no whiff, if you will, of ambergris in this story at all. Now, having said all of that, I do think the teleplay by Scott Rosenberg is an improvement over the original, in that we get an interesting story as far as like wartime photographers, which is a subject that doesn't come up enough, but we don't get anything as far as where the ambergris goes. Where the script works better than the comic is Lizette Anthony's character, Steve Buscemi's wife in the episode, doesn't have any interest in Roger Daltrey at all. She's very much devoted to her husband, and then sort of uses the disease-ridden potpourri or, incense that Steve Buscemi tends to send back to her from wherever clime he ends up going to use it as a form of revenge, even though it kills her as well, to exact revenge for Steve Buscemi on the guy.
Well, this is one of those episodes that really sticks with me. And it sticks with me because I think the practical effects are so good.
They're really good in this episode.
And they're really gross. And you feel bad for Steve Buscemi's character because he's knowingly thrown into the deep end by Roger Daltrey.
Truly.
I mean, at one point, his eyeball pops out of his head.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's super
pretty
gross.
fucking gnarly. It's gnarly.
Yeah.
This may be the grossest episode of the show.
Do you think?
I think so.
Yeah, it's pretty gross.
Up until this point, at least.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, Till Death, an episode is a voodoo episode from a couple years ago where we had a sort of like walking corpse female character. Like, that was pretty spot on, pretty gnarly as well. But as far as a character sort of disintegrating on screen, it's pretty fantastic. When Steve Buscemi sort of comes back from the village and is slowly disintegrating in front of Roger Daltrey, it is awful. Part of that is the makeup, and part of that is the performance of Steve Buscemi, who really sells the fact that he is coming apart while standing.
Literally at the seams.
Yeah, it's really bad. Kudos to the makeup team in this particular episode. They did a creditable job.
Yeah, no, the makeup's good. I mean, the story itself is pretty, not one note, but it's not anything particularly creative. It's a pretty kind of straightforward revenge story in a way.
Yeah, but at least it's not the same typical love triangle episode where the wife is cheating with this guy. Like, it was absolutely refreshing that he comes on to her. Roger Daltrey's character comes on to Lizette Anthony, and she's just like, no, like, I get it. You're a handsome guy. You're wildly successful. I know all of that, but my husband is none of the things that you are, and I love him like, to the nth degree. Like, that was, to me, a better twist than most of the twists that they end up foisting on us in this series. And kudos to Scott Rosenberg on this part. Now, Scott Rosenberg, if he's known for anything, he wrote Gone in 60 Seconds, the remake, Con Air, the original draft of that, and he wrote a, in my opinion, wildly underrated film called Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. I thought Scott Rosenberg was a really interesting writer in the sort of early to mid-90s. You can feel that in this episode. He's got some good ideas going on here.
Yeah. I mean, I like it. I like this episode a lot, even for how gross it is. Like, it verges on, like, unnecessarily disgusting.
Yeah, but you know what? If you're going to do it, fucking go for it.
And cruel, too. Oh, yeah. It's unnecessarily disgusting and unnecessarily cruel as well. I mean, this is one of the episodes where you're like, I really am glad that the bad guy, the villain, gets what he has coming to him.
Yeah, and again, as a motivation of the plot, the fact that the wife knows fully well what she's getting into by opening this package that Steve Buscemi has sent to her, and she's not only going to end up dying because of it, she's going to use it as a form of revenge for him against this lead character. Like, I thought that was pretty innovative. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, it's a good episode. I like it a lot as well, for sure. It benefits from good performances and great makeup, for sure, but I think it's just an all-around good episode.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, so far, 1, 2, 3 episodes into season 5, like, hitting on all cylinders, like, really delivering what I expect from Tales from the Crypt. Like, this isn't a great episode. This isn't fucking Man Who Was Death, but pretty solid overall.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a solid episode, and it's definitely worth a watch. So,
watch for me as well.
Before we talk about Food for Thought, we're going to play an interview that I did with Ernie Hudson a couple years back, talking about his participation in the episode Food for Thought. And when we get back, we'll talk about the episode. On Tales from the Crypt, in Season 5, you play the Great Zambini in an episode called Food for Thought. Had you watched the show before you were involved with it?
Not really. I mean, I'm sure I may have seen an episode or two. I'm not really a big television watcher. So I got the call from my agent. Joan Chin was playing my wife, I think, and I'd seen something she had done, so that was reason enough to do it for me. I knew about the show, and I wasn't a watcher, and I knew that a lot of people were doing it, and I knew they were sort of committed to a certain level of excellence, that they had some great filmmakers doing it, and so I was excited about doing it.
Yeah, because at the point when you were on the show, it was beyond, I guess, established at that point.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It'd been around for a while, and and it was an interesting character. I mean, part of what I love to do, which is acting, it's been very hard. I mean, it's been a career where I don't always get a chance to do that. Because a lot of times I can be in a movie, play a character in a movie, and it's just a moment. It's not really an intricate part of the story. Somebody else's story, and so you try to bring everything you can to it, but you're only limited because you can only it doesn't require that much. It doesn't require a lot from you. So sometimes it's just a matter of, showing up and not, bringing your whole arsenal. You want to simplify it as best you can because it gets in the way of all the other stuff that's going on. And that becomes very frustrating. So every once in a while a role will come along like, Tales from the Crypt, where I get to be the crazy guy who does all the stuff, and I get to play with other actors, and I am an integral part of the story.
Right.
I live for that, So it doesn't. There's been a lot of stuff where it's like, okay, well, I'm not involved enough to really save the day. So.
Right.
But I loved that script. I loved the character. It was very bizarre.
It's very different from anything I had ever seen you in.
Yeah, it was kind of fun because for me, the chance to sort of go into a character, to go into kind of just the psychology of what is going on. I mean, you take a character like the Great Zambini or the Hand That Rocks the Cradle or even the Congo character. I mean, you get a chance to sort of explore this, as opposed to, say, they want me to be the guy who's a librarian. He has 3 scenes, and he just sort of, he's there. He's a guy. So, you still have to do the homework for it, but it's different when a guy like the Great Zambini is unraveling because his wife is leaving him and he's trying to control her, and there was so much stuff going on. That's the fun stuff. It's frustrating because it's hard to sleep at night, because you come up with all these ideas and you want to sort of, and then you got to fight with the director who doesn't see all that. But that's you live for that because it demands more of you.
Right.
And it's sort of you get to embody it as opposed to, you show up, you say the words, and you don't. It's just different. It's just you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. So. The character in the Hand Rock. I did a movie for TV One called To Hell and Back, and I was playing the character Job as a sort of modern day telling of the Job story. But that character was so amazing because of all the stuff that was going on. For an actor, you sort of live and breathe that stuff. I mean, it's great when you play with other actors and how does this impact and what goes on. And, I mean, all the fun stuff that when I first became an actor, getting on stage and how does this guy walk and what does he sound like? The character in the Great Zambini, he had a different sound than, and how, it's full. And that was one of the full characters that I had fun with.
Was there anything particularly memorable about kind of filming that episode?
Well, it was fun. I mean, it was great working with her. The director and I, we didn't agree on a lot. So trying to find my space, trying to honor his space, and that's it. We didn't agree a lot. We just had our differences in terms of my relationship with the wife, the Joan Chin character, her leaving with how about relationships, a lot of things. It was difficult, but I think sometimes that's part of the creative process because you don't necessarily get what you want, and they don't necessarily get what they want, but hopefully you come out with something in between that works.
Right. And you're in full makeup in the entire episode.
Yeah, it was written. It was odd. I thought, and I haven't seen it in a long time. So, but I think it was written. The character description in the script that I got was 350-pound white actor who's in this clown makeup, and he loved the eating. So I think it opened with me cooking, and he's eating, and it's he's gluttonous, and
yeah.
So when they cast me in the part, I'm not 350 pounds. So in the makeup, the clown makeup almost came out kind of primal and a little bit African, a little bit. It was just. It wasn't a typical circus clown makeup, I didn't think anyway. And it was different, and but it was great. I mean, I loved it for that reason. It was a little sort of about, and maybe that's what the Tales of the Crypt, should be about. And maybe that was, a great part of the experience is to be able to explore all that. I can't remember, somebody else was in it. There was another actor. I can't remember. Wait a minute, the other cast. But some actor came up to me recently and told me that he did a part in that episode. But it was it was a great experience. It was great to be able to work on that show. And I don't know whoever saw it. I don't think I've ever got some jobs I've done where people say, "Oh, I saw that," and we called you in. So created jobs. I don't think anybody's ever given me a job because of Tales of the Crypt, but I love the and sometimes your best work gets, I don't say lost, but it doesn't necessarily get seen. So Yeah, it may have been a time of the show when it wasn't quite as, whatever as the beginning, or maybe it was just bizarre. But it was fun. I'm glad I got the experience, the chance to do it.
And it's a good episode. It still kind of holds up, and there are episodes of the show that don't hold up anymore. But yeah. I think that the timeless nature of the kind of carnival theme is one that kind of translates well.
Yeah, I'd love to. I haven't seen it. I think I might have seen it when it came out the first time, but I haven't seen it in years. So, it was. Every once in a while, because you do the conventions, and of course people come up and they'll ask about Ghostbusters or The Crow, the obvious ones. But somebody will come up and mention Tales from the Crypt or some obscure movie that I think, oh, nobody ever saw that, and somebody says, oh yeah, no. So you never know who's watching. You do this stuff. It's all out there, floating around. And but that was one that I have good memories. I just remember it was a lot of work. That's what I remember about that show.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think when as an actor you find a character, once you get in sync with the character, then it's just fun because you're seated in it. And in Tales of the Crypt, I could never get in sync with it because the director had a different view, and so it was always hard to really just settle in it and have fun. But it was work, and so yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine kind of clashing with the director, leading to kind of a different feel for everything on set.
Yeah. It sometimes you want to, when you, like with the Hand Ross Equator, when you finally link, and then you kind of know, then you kind of live the character. You kind of know. It's not even right or wrong. It's what's right for the character, and you're there. You sort of I don't know. It's like you're. But when somebody's always questioning, or then it makes it turbulent because you're trying to accommodate, you're trying to do that, it just, and that was a hard job.
Frankly, your hack-rays look terrible. You've got to pay closer attention to your oral hygiene, or you'll end up looking like me. I want you to brush after every meal, floss and gargoyle twice a day. Yes, looks like I'll have to drill. This won't hurt me a bit. In the meantime, to take your mind off the pain, I've got a little dose of nitrous oxide for you. It's about a sideshow mind reader who's lost his head over a pretty girl. I call it Food for Thought.
So, Food for Thought aired October 6, 1993. It stars Ernie Hudson, Joan Chen, and John Laughlin. It is directed by Rodman Flender and written by Larry Wilson. And it is about a psychic clown who abuses his assistant.
Yeah, isn't it?
It's not good. It's not good.
Nah, it's garbage. This
episode... like the twist is such a non sequitur. It's like it almost feels like they're just laughing at themselves. Like they know that this episode's a joke.
It's real bad, man. This is based on a Tales from the Crypt a comic book, which is, rare for a Tales from the Crypt series. This was out of Tales from the Crypt number 40. Again, written and drawn by Mr. Jack Davis. I like the comic a whole lot more than what we got on screen. Got to admit, the plot is absolutely similar in that we have the whole thing takes place in a not a carnival but a traveling circus, where in the comic book it's the wife of the circus's resident psychic, and she's fallen in love with the lion tamer. The husband has figured out that his wife is cheating on him and then decides to feed the lion tamer to the lions. At the same time, there's a running subplot where each of the places that they go to, there have been reports of local cemeteries being raided. The corpses have been dug up. The psychic guy gets his revenge by feeding the lion tamer his cuckold, if you will, to the lions. They end up burying him, at which point the wife, out of revenge, knocks him out, but knows he's still alive, decides to have the rest of the circus bury him alive, even though he's seemingly unconscious or dead to them. And then in the final frames, the husband realizes that even though he's been buried and dead, the reports of the grave robbing are not because of any reason other than there's a ghoul in their midst, a ghoul, traditionally, we've seen it here in Tales from the Crypt and a previous episode with Rita Wilson, ghouls dig up the corpses of the recently dead in order to feast upon them. And so he ends up getting eaten while he's still alive. Much more interesting than what we got here in the episode, which, the lead character is not even the psychic. He's just a guy who can project really well to the psychic, played by Joan Chen. And in this case, they end up having the gorilla come and exact revenge. I don't know. This was lackluster at best. This makes Dig That Cat He's Real Gone, which was set in a similar milieu of the sort of circus setting, seem like 100,000% better than what we got here. Much love to everyone involved, by the way. Ernie Hudson is really good. If you ever wanted to see Ernie Hudson getting a blowjob while eating chocolates, this is the episode for you.
If you want to see Ernie Hudson having his time wasted, it's a real bummer, because Ernie Hudson's a cool guy, and he's still my favorite Ghostbuster, and he's criminally wasted in this episode. His performance is fun, but the episode is just so goofy. This is just a weird episode because, the twist also is just fucking bizarre. The twist is insane.
That gorilla's gonna get you. I don't have much to elaborate on as far as where this episode goes.
I mean, ultimately, I think this episode is it's a weird attempt to, have something interesting to show on screen of, a gorilla eating a human head, and they worked backwards from that. And it doesn't work like that. And this episode doesn't work at all.
I want to taste your mind. Okay, gotcha.
Great, sure, awesome, who cares?
Let's see a gorilla eating a brain.
I don't understand. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, geez, look, we're going to have
for as good as the last 3 episodes were, this one is a real stinker.
Yeah, I want to segregate all of the episodes from season 4 and throw this one into it, because the promise of the first 3 episodes so far has been really high, and we end up getting kind of a rote Tales from the Crypt episode. And this, shockingly, no, it's not shocking, because the original Tales from the Crypt comic that I described really traffics in what Tales from the Crypt was best at, which is throwing in a supernatural element. The idea that we have this guy who's still alive and buried, and now he's dug up by a ghoul and slowly eaten while he's living and can't do anything about it, is really potent and could have been shocking and horrible. And instead, what we get is just the sort of typical guy controlling a girl and gets his comeuppance. But does he? I mean, it's not like he's alive while the fucking gorilla is taking him apart. He's dead at that point. The idea of being slowly eaten while you're still alive is really horrific and could have swayed my opinion of this in a different direction. This is Rodman Flender, the genius behind Leprechaun 2, directing. It's shot okay, I guess. I mean, Ernie Hudson's probably the best thing in it.
He totally is, and it's also a shame that Joan Chen is in this episode.
Yeah, Joan Chen, Josie Packard, man, forever and always.
Turned into a doorknob.
She turned into a doorknob. What is that about?
Isn't that what happened to her in Twin Peaks?
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Super weird, super spooky.
Super weird.
Yeah. Joan Chen is a good actor. Most of the actors here are really good. This one hewed back to season 4 in the good enough level. We've got enough weirdness here where the shortcomings we feel aren't going to be as evident, but they really are. particularly in comparison to what we've gotten in previous weeks. If you got 3 episodes at the outset, the first 3 that we talked about, and then this is delivered the sort of week after, this would make me not want to continue to watch.
Yeah, well, and the thing is for how good the last 3 episodes were, this one is such a dud.
Yeah, I mean,
such a dud.
It's got a couple of charms in it, you know, but mainly performances. But the script isn't doing anybody any favors.
No, it's not. And again, it feels like a waste of Ernie Hudson's time, a waste of Joan Chen's time, a waste of everybody's time. And that's the biggest disappointment, is because Ernie Hudson and Joan Chen aren't on the show again. And pretty much no one who is on the show is ever on it again. Unless you want to talk about, like, Miguel Ferrer in the last episode that we talked about, or William Sadler, or the guy, Roy Brockman, who plays a bartender a couple times.
I will say that the little person involved in this episode, he comes back in a big way for which I'm sure we're going to be discussing next as a bonus episode. As far as Bordello of Blood goes, he's a major character in that. That's a good actor, but given nothing to do here other than being an ogling little creep.
Well, kind of par for the course of the episode, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's not good. This is a skip. This is not even a soft skip. This is a hard skip for me. Watch episodes 1, 2, and 3, and then do not watch this one, and you're going to be satisfied.
So, it's a skip for me as well. With that in mind, on the next episode of Chronicles from the Crypt, we're going to be talking about episodes 5 and 6 of Season 5, People Who Live in Brass Hearses, and 2 for the Show. I don't remember liking either of them.
I don't remember either of those.
One has Bill Paxton.
Oh, well, you know what? I'm already enjoying it.
He's a hot-tempered convict with a butter addiction.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, exactly. So until then, where can people find you, Father Malone?
Go check me out on my YouTube channel, Ot5 Films. Check out my show You've Never Seen, about movies that have fallen by the wayside or not gotten enough love that they deserve. You can hear me also over on the Dreams for Sale Twilight Zone 85 podcast, where we talk about the Twilight Zone reboot from 85, which was fucking amazing, and not anything like the early 2000s or the most recent reboot of the show. On occasion, you can hear me over on the Culture Cast, your podcast, Chris, where I guest every once in a while and sometimes program.
And as for myself, you can find me on the One Season Show, The Life and Times of Barney Miller, and that's it. And here, obviously. So, yeah, those are good places to look for me. ChroniclesFTC.com, ChroniclesFTC on Twitter, and also we're on Instagram. So check us out in those places. Big thanks, as always, to John Kassir for the intro music for the podcast, and we'll catch you on the next episode.